Hey there. Okay, we're back. Thanks for joining me again. And I have to say that it's interesting how so many people are actually using their resources and being innovative. And I see people on Facebook that are also doing books and discussions and just all kinds of things are going on out there. So I love Americans and I love humans that are willing to not, in essence, feel like a victim, but are willing and ready to step up to challenges. So I'm happy to have you here. I'm happy that we're connecting. Hopefully, this is blessing you. And I changed up a little bit of the format. I am so blessed to have two teenagers that are so much more tech savvy than I am. And so because of that, I switched out the venue where I'm using my phone versus my laptop. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better picture. So what I want to do is get started in chapter 3 and continue our journey of a bibliotherapy. Okay, so the chapter is labeled Crisis of Belief. To my shame, I admit that one of the strongest reasons I stay in the fold is the lack of good alternatives, many of which I have tried. Lord, to whom shall I go? The only thing more difficult than having a relationship with an invisible God is having no such relationship. And that's from Philip Yancey. The Chinese symbol for crisis is understood to be a sign of both danger and opportunity. Danger in that it represents a time of threat, a threat that not only to our sense of being, but also that shakes our already established belief system to the core. And on the other hand, crisis also represents a time of opportunity, a time when people are most open or susceptible for change. I think we're seeing that now. You've heard the phrase, perhaps even said it about somebody, hey, he won't change until he hits rock bottom. Have you ever been there personally? You don't have to be an alcoholic or drug addict to hit rock bottom. Many times we reach this place in our lives where we question our meaning and reason for living because of an unexplained relational, spiritual, or emotional crisis. And it's usually during a crisis that we are forced to develop a new way of perceiving, coping, and dealing with life to resolve it and move forward. As a young boy, Tim, always wanted to be like my dad. At 17 years old, he left the comfort of his family in central Pennsylvania, like millions of other young men and women did at the time, to serve in the U.S. military during World War II. He was a soldier seaman on the USS Pennsylvania, spending a lot of time in the South Pacific. He loved the outdoors. He was able to fix about anything on our cars. What I loved about him, and what many others who loved him felt as well, was how kind and gentle a man he was. He loved to laugh, and he always made you feel like you were the most important person in the world to him. When he came home from the war, he sought out his old high school sweetheart and married her. Wrestling with meaning and direction in his life, he decided to give his life to Jesus Christ, and he soon packed up to go and become a minister. What I loved about his faith was that he didn't force it on us as children. He simply lived it. A man who never met a stranger, a friend to all. The locals called him a long, cool drink of fresh water. He wasn't a father, he was a dad. They say that old sailors can smell land before they see it. Dad could. Late in life, he talked often about heaven and angels, and he loved the book of Revelation in the Bible. He suffered deeply when my mother died. He battled prostate cancer and heart disease, and he fought a gallant war with a cancer of the bone marrow. At age 81, when he went into the hospital with severe complications surrounding the death grip of multiple myeloma cancer, somehow or another, he knew it would be his curtain call. God gave him the strength to call all 8 of his children one last time. I was in Atlanta on a business trip when I got my call. He wanted to assure me that he was all right and that he would be going to the kingdom of our God. Tearfully, I listened and told him what he meant to me. Tim, if you serve God, I promise you that you will be blessed. There is no greater joy. He then said, it's because of him that I will see you again. I made it home on a late afternoon flight to be with him, just in time to hold his hand and talk. He was fading quickly, so mostly I just held his hand. And later that next morning, July 11, 2007, at 7 a.m., he died, with my brother Tom and me standing at his side, holding his hands. I prayed Psalms 23 over him. I really hated to see him go. Nowhere else will you come closer to looking for reasons to believe that God exists and matters in your everyday life than when you're faced with death, yours or that of a loved one. Perhaps because believing in God will help relieve the feelings of loneliness when we stare death directly in the face. Alfred Nobel, the man who left his riches for the institution of the Nobel Prizes and who incidentally was not known for his spirituality, had another view. Read by a friend at his funeral was a letter that Nobel wrote. Silent you stand before the altar of death. Life here and life after constitute an eternal conundrum, but its expiring spark awakens us to holy devotion and quiets every other voice except that of religion. Eternity has the floor. Do you see the reality in what Nobel is saying? Think about your own life. It usually takes a calamity, a tragedy, or death to move us. More often than not, the sense of invincibility, youth, intellect, and good health clouds any thoughts or feelings of a need for God, or the all too soon reality of death. No wonder C.S. Lewis penned that pain is God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. What's even more interesting to this search for divine answers and what Nobel called a holy devotion is that it has now become empirically valid. Researchers are finding that we have a system built into the very fabric of our DNA that explains the longing every one of us has for meaning and purpose greater than ourselves, a longing that usually comes alive in times of crisis. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. So the next section is an unexamined life. Josh, which is the other writer, best friend from college is an atheist who challenged my belief of God's existence. His humanistic rationale for believing went something like this. So Josh says, what if you're wrong? What if there is a God, a heaven and a hell, and your unwillingness to believe you go to hell? And Brian said, what if you're wrong? What if in your leap of faith, you are so convinced God exists that you live your life not having any fun? You miss the parties, the ladies, the drinking, the getting high, and the fun of socializing because you think God is going to somehow bless you and take you to heaven. Meanwhile, I'm out having fun in this life, making the most of it. Then when we both die, we just die. No heaven, no hell, no God. Then who lived the better life? I'll put my money in that pot. But as Tim Keller says, some will respond and say, my doubts are not based on a leap of faith. I have no beliefs about God one way or another. I simply feel no need for God, and I am not interested in thinking about it. But hidden beneath this feeling is the very modern American belief that the existence of God is a matter of indifference unless it intersects with emotional needs. The speaker is betting his or her life that no God exists who would hold you accountable for your beliefs and behavior if you didn't feel the need for him. That may be true or it may not be true, but again, it is quite a leap of faith. From a psychological perspective, this is a profound statement coming from a modern-day apologist and pastor in the middle of New York City. What Keller is saying about those who do not believe in God and hold to this particular viewpoint is that they presume that those who do believe in God are people who actually experience an emotional need for him. Sounds similar to Sigmund Freud's definition of using God as a crutch, doesn't it? However, there is truth in this, in that when we come to an emotional crossroads, we will at some point have to question the existence and power of God in our own lives. Nobody is immune to the emotional crisis of life. We will all feel the emptiness and pain of disappointment, loneliness, and eventually death, and have to reconcile that with our current belief system. It truly is a moment of threat or opportunity. The choice is yours. Going to church. Okay, think about something for a moment. Do you go to church on Sunday, and if so, why? If you don't attend church, why not? If you show up occasionally, why are you not going consistently? Why not just stop going altogether? What would it matter? Seriously, take a moment and think about these motivational questions for going to church before you read on. Maybe even write down the reasons you do or do not attend church. It's just time for self-exploration. The reason we have asked you to do this is that we believe it tells us something about our belief in God. Many of us go to church because we genuinely believe God matters in our everyday life. Others of us go to church saying we believe in God but silently wonder if He matters. And still, others of us don't go to church at all because we don't believe He matters. Or if we do, we question whether church itself matters. Still, others of us have been disappointed in God, but in church members have not been disappointed in God, but in church members or leaders who have tragically let us down. Whether you go to church or not, take a moment right now for this self-assessment about your church attendance. Now ask yourself how your view of church and even God Himself has been skewed by the disappointments in your life. For many of us, going to church is difficult because when we get back into our cars to go home, our feeling of the way life really is resurfaces. Deep down, we feel the tension and the reality that go beyond the beautiful Sunday dresses and slick ties, handshakes, smiles, and how do you do's. An unsettling sense of disappointment continues in our lives. We continue to wander due to the financial pressure, terminal cancer, divorce, domestic violence, job loss, miscarriage, rebellious teenager, abuse, or pain-filled marriage, whether God does actually make a difference in our everyday life and the way we're living it. When our disappointments mount, so do our doubts about God. Big-time disappointments. It's interesting how pain works in our lives. No one is immune. For most of us, pain brings a lot of confusion and discouragement. Amy, a former client, struggled in her spirit and constantly wondered, will anyone notice? Trying to cover up this bruise is so hard. Too much makeup is even more noticeable. And my husband said he was sorry, but he said that before. I just wish I knew what to do. I'm so scared. Maybe Pastor John will help me. No, wait, he doesn't like divorce. How can I share what I'm feeling with my pastor? If the statistics hold true, disappointments are affecting each and every one of us. In fact, 1 in every 4 women reading this book right now is being abused by her partner or has experienced abuse at some time in her past. An estimated 1.3 million women are victims of physical assault by an intimate partner each year. That is a shocking number of women who are sitting in the pews wondering if they're really worthy of being loved, disappointed that their relationship and therefore their life isn't what it's supposed to be. A father vows to himself, I'm going to stop today. I can't go on and keep this secret. It's too hard. I just don't know how to quit. I would get rid of my computer, but I need it for work. I need to tell someone, but who? My wife would be so hurt if she knew. What about my kids? If the statistics hold true, approximately 40 million Americans are sexually involved with the internet and 72 million internet users visit pornography websites each year. In addition, 47% of Christians admit that pornography is a major problem in the home. And catch this, 34% of church-going women have admitted to intentionally visiting porn websites online as well. Intentionally or unintentionally, over half of American teens have looked at those pornographic websites. So have 43% of pastors who have responded too. Internet pornography is a big-time secret in the hearts of millions of men and women. Yet, apart from the selfishness and false intimacy of the act, there lies a deep desire for a healthy relationship, to know and be known. Finally, a teenage girl contemplates, I'm so fat. If I eat, it will make matters worse. Katie says I need to talk to somebody, but I'm not sure. I have it under control. If I just weren't so tired all the time. I miss going out with my friends, and my mom keeps nagging me to eat. She's the one who needs to talk to someone, but who? According to the latest research, 81% of 10-year-olds worry that they are too fat. 40% of 9-year-old girls have dieted, and 75% of girls have wished they could surgically change something about their body. In addition to domestic abuse, pornography, and eating disorders comes the breakdown of family relationships. By age 18, 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused by someone they were supposed to love and trust. And this morning, 40% of Americans' children woke up in a home where their biological father does not live. And I would go ahead and say that these numbers are probably lower than what they actually are, because these are what are reported. These are the children running by you in church on Sunday morning, the men passing the offering plate, and the women singing in the choir. Maybe you're one of them. What counselors recognize every day is that behind that statistic lies the heart and soul of a disappointed, broken individual who is searching, questioning, yet hoping. Do you know what it's like to be sexually abused? To be hit by your spouse? To be hiding a secret? Adultery, pornography, abortion, abuse? Then to go to church and try to hear about a God who loves you? When you're wounded in a relationship, it's hard to hear. It's hard to trust. It's hard to feel safe, even with God. He seems distant, unapproachable, uncaring. And those of us who do believe wonder why we doubt. Those of us who don't believe can't understand why we look for reasons to believe. The unexamined life examined. Physician M. Scott Peck famously penned the words, "Life is difficult. Even the Bible tells us, in this world you will have trouble. At some point in life, every one of us will be disappointed by life circumstances, coming to the conclusion that life is not the way it's supposed to be. But problems are never really the issue. We all will have more than our share. What we choose to do with those problems makes all the differences in our spiritual journey. Often the disappointments quickly lead to doubt, but to refuse to doubt for whatever reason will lead to a failure to understand why you believe. As Henry David Thoreau discovered, faith keeps many doubts in her pay. If I could not doubt, I should not believe. Believe it or not, doubting and questioning are the path toward real faith. In the search for God in our everyday life, we will eventually take one of two paths. The first and most healthy journey is that we will allow our doubts to lead us to a deeper understanding of why we believe what we do, whether we choose to believe in God or not. But even then, those of us who choose this route must doubt our doubts. The second and most devastating of the two paths is giving very little examination or contemplation to the disappointment we have experienced in life. We talk more about those of us who walk this path later in the book. For now, we would like to describe it as pseudo-faith. I'm going to pause there, and I will restart this on the next section. So again, just trying to break it up into little bite-sized pieces so that we don't get overwhelmed with all the information. Thank you again, and I'll see you soon.